how do you really stay informed? I mean, in a world that just never stops, where, huge discoveries and massive social shifts are happening all the time, it can feel, well, pretty overwhelming, right? And that's exactly why we created the Deep Dive. Think of this as your shortcut, really, designed for you, the curious learner, to cut through all that noise. We get straight to the essential insights. Today, we're diving deep into a really comprehensive current affairs magazine from October 2024. Our mission: to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge. We're covering a huge range from surprising legal shifts and global economics, right through to the secrets of the deep ocean. Expect some, aha moments, those bits that make you feel truly informed.
Absolutely. And it's not just the facts, is it? We want to help you connect the dots, understand the why behind it all, the so what of these key global developments, seeing how they all kind of link together.
Okay, let's kick things off. First up, a really fascinating development from India. There's a brand new statue of Lady Justice at the Supreme Court. And it's not just, a nice sculpture, it's packed with symbolism.
It really is.
Yeah.
You see, the traditional Lady Justice, she comes from Greek myths, Themis, and Roman ones. Justitia usually has the blindfold, the scales, the sword, and those symbols. They came to India during colonial times. Think Calcutta High Court, 1872, Bombay High Court.
Yeah.
That's the image people know.
Right, but this new one, it's different, really different, and memorable. For starters, the blindfold, gone. It depicts law as seeing everyone equally, not blind. And instead of that sword, she's holding the Constitution in her left hand. That's a powerful statement, isn't it, about its supremacy? Plus, she's wearing a sari, not the usual Western robes, so it connects directly to Indian tradition. The scales are still there, though, in the right hand for balance.
Mm-hmm. And the significance of these changes, well, it's quite profound. It's saying the law needs to actively consider India's, social diversity. It needs to uplift the underprivileged. It really fits into India's wider effort to sort of shed those colonial symbols and build a justice system that feels more relevant, more aligned with its own culture and constitution.
And it's not just symbols, is it? India's judiciary is also making practical changes. Tell us about the prisons. What's happening there?
That's right. There's been significant action from the Supreme Court recently. They've struck down rules in state prison manuals, some quite old, like the Madhya Pradesh one from 87, West Bengal's from 67, that were explicitly based on caste. These rules, believe it or not, assigned work based on caste. The court basically said, no, this is unconstitutional. It violates fundamental rights and just entrenches discrimination. So the court laid out some clear directives. All states, all union territories, they have 3 months to revise our manuals, get rid of this stuff. They need to align with the Justice Mullah Committee recommendations from way back in 1983, which called for modernizing prisons, and the central government. They need to update the Model Prison Manual from 2016 and the Draft Act from 2023 to specifically tackle caste discrimination. Oh, and crucially, they have to remove the caste column from admission registers and warrants. Stop institutionalizing it right at the entry point.
So what does this all mean for how justice is actually, perceived and carried out in India? What's the bigger picture?
It's a big step, a really big step in making constitutional values real within prisons. It directly confronts that systemic discrimination against marginalized groups, something the National Human Rights Commission has been flagging for years.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, it pushes towards reformative justice, not just punishment. The Model Prison Manual, which the court pointed to, it emphasizes rehabilitation, vocational training, education, psychological support. It's all about dignity, aligning with global standards like the Nelson Mandela rules, give people a chance to reintegrate.
Okay, fascinating. So from those specific national reforms in India, let's zoom out. Let's look at the bigger forces shaping global wealth. The recent Nobel Prize in Economics seems to really challenge some common ideas, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This year's prize went to Darren Acemoglu, Simon Johnson, and James Robinson. And their work is groundbreaking. It really digs into why some nations are rich and others poor, and their answer. It comes down to fundamental differences in how countries are governed, their economic rules, what they call institutions. These are the real drivers, they argue.
So it kind of redefines how we should think about wealth and poverty globally. What's the core idea? The bit that might surprise people trying to make sense of it all.
Well, the core is this distinction between inclusive institutions and extractive institutions. Inclusive ones. They foster things like property rights, democracy, broad economic opportunity. They encourage investment, innovation for everyone. That leads to long-term growth. Extractive ones, on the other hand, they concentrate power and wealth in the hands of a few. They stifle innovation, they block broad participation, and ultimately, they lead to stagnation. And here's a really surprising connection they make: the legacy of colonization. They found that where colonizers faced, say, high disease rates and couldn't settle easily, they often set up purely extractive systems just to get resources out quickly. But in places more hospitable, they sometimes built more inclusive institutions, aiming for longer-term settlement and prosperity. This history helps explain why places right next to each other, like Nogales on the U.S.-Mexico border, can be so drastically different in wealth, despite similar geography. It's the institutions.
Wow. So it's not just about resources or culture then. It's about the actual structures built over time. Is that idea fully accepted, or are there nuances?
That's a great question. I mean, the framework is incredibly powerful. But yes, some scholars would argue, that maybe initial resources or geography or even just historical luck can play a bigger role sometimes. It's complex. But the core message for reform, that's pretty clear. Just focusing on economic growth isn't enough if you want to tackle inequality. You need institutional reform. Without inclusive institutions, growth gets undermined by corruption or autocracy or lack of investment. Their work really hammers home that things like democracy, rule of law, property rights, they are essential for cutting poverty and inequality. And even with tech advances, you need institutions to make sure the benefits are shared, mitigating problems like job displacement.
That gives us so much to think about. Really makes you consider how this applies to challenges you see maybe in your own country or others you follow. Okay, let's shift gears again. From these big economic forces, let's dive literally into another huge, mostly unseen force shaping our planet. A really surprising discovery from the deep ocean.
Yeah, we're talking about the Twilight Zone. Officially, it's the mesopelagic zone. It's that layer of ocean between about 200 and 1,000 meters down. It's dim, just a faint glow gets through, but not enough light for photosynthesis like you have near the surface.
And the truly mind-blowing thing about this zone, recent evidence suggests the total biomass, like the sheer weight of all living stuff down there, it actually outweighs all the fish caught by all global fisheries combined. Just let that sink in for a second. It's this massive hidden world of life.
It really is immense.
Yeah.
And it's a unique environment. Limited light, a sharp drop in temperature as you go deeper. But it's teeming with diverse life. Lots of creatures there have amazing adaptations, like bioluminescence making their own light. And it plays such a vital role in the whole ocean food web. Think about it. Stuff sinks from the sunlit zone, providing nutrients down below. Oxygen is lower than the surface, sure, but enough to support this incredible ecosystem.
Okay, but why should we, living up here on land, care about this dark, deep part of the ocean? What difference does it make to us or the planet?
Oh, it matters hugely for several reasons. First, biodiversity. It's a massive reservoir of different species, many still unknown, which contributes to the overall health of the oceans. Second, and this is critical, carbon sequestration. It acts as a giant carbon sink. It traps carbon coming down from the surface waters, helping to buffer climate change. That's a huge planetary service. Third, as I mentioned, that nutrient transfer is essential for the entire ocean food web, connecting surface and deep sea life. Fourth, research opportunities. Studying this zone gives us vital clues about climate change impacts, pollution effects. That knowledge helps manage fisheries better, informs conservation, and finally, those unique adaptations. Bioluminescence, surviving high pressure. They can inspire breakthroughs in biotech, even medicine.
It really does make you think, doesn't it? How much of our own planet is still basically unexplored? We look up at space, but there's this whole other universe just beneath the waves.
Right, let's pivot again. From the deep sea mysteries to something much more, industrial. A process that has totally reshaped human history, literally feeds billions. But it comes with a major environmental catch.
We're talking about the Haber-Bosch process. This is the industrial chemical reaction that lets us make ammonia NH3 directly from nitrogen gas from the air, N2, and hydrogen gas, H2. It was figured out by Fritz Haber, then scaled up for industry by Carl Bosch. It basically solved the problem of getting usable nitrogen for fertilizers out of thin air, and it requires some pretty intense conditions, very high pressure, like 200 times atmospheric pressure, high temperatures, 400 to 500 degrees Celsius, and an iron catalyst to make it happen efficiently. It's also a reversible reaction, so they optimize conditions to push it towards making ammonia.
It's just incredible, isn't it? One chemical process feeding billions. But what's the fundamental tension here? This huge benefit versus the ecological cost. Where's the friction? Well, that's the crux of it. It shows how even our most brilliant solutions can have, a hidden price tag. Haber-Bosch is the perfect example. The positive impact. Immense. Nitrogen fertilizers made using this process are estimated to sustain something like 40% of the world's population. Seriously. Without it, maybe a third of us, 2 billion people, just wouldn't have enough food. The scale is staggering. They produce around 275 billion pounds of ammonia a year. It's one of the highest volume chemicals we make. And the global fertilizer market, which depends on it, worth nearly $191 billion back in 2022 and growing. But despite being revolutionary, there are major environmental downsides. Pumping all this synthetic nitrogen into the environment causes excess nitrogen pollution, which harms ecosystems, degrades soil, and contributes significantly to climate change through nitrous oxide emissions. Balancing the benefits and the costs. That's a huge ongoing challenge.
It really is a powerful reminder, isn't it? How one single industrial process affects our daily lives, our food, and the health of the entire planet. Profound implications. Okay, let's wrap up our deep dive today by focusing on a massive social initiative, this one from India, that just marked its 10th anniversary, the Swachh Bharat mission.
Right, the Swachh Bharat mission, or SBM, launched back on October 2nd, 2014. The big goal: achieve a clean India. It has two arms, basically. SBM Gramin for rural areas, focusing on sanitation, and SBM Urban for the cities. And now it's in phase 2, running from 2020 to 2025. The focus here is on ODF+, which means not just stopping open defecation, but making sure that's sustainable, and also tackling solid and liquid waste management properly.
Okay, so 10 years in, what are the standout achievements? What has this huge mission actually accomplished?
Well, the numbers are pretty impressive. As of October 2024, they've declared over 700,000 villages open defecation-free ODF. That involved constructing something like 100 million toilets across the country. A massive improvement in rural sanitation. On the waste management side, in cities, many are now processing over 75% of their waste, and door-to-door waste collection is happening in over 97% of urban wards. There's an economic impact, too. A UNICEF study suggested that being ODF saved households around 50,000 rupees a year, mainly by cutting down on medical expenses linked to poor sanitation. It's even had global recognition, inspiring similar campaigns like Nigeria's Clean Nigeria campaign. And the health benefits. The WHO reported significant drops in things like diarrhea deaths, malaria cases, even child wasting and stillbirth rates. Plus, Safety for Women UNICEF found 93% felt safer having a toilet at home. And environmentally, ODF villages have a much lower risk, like 12.7 times lower of groundwater contamination from human waste.
That's a really striking list of successes, especially for something on this scale. But surely, with a project this big, there must be ongoing challenges.
Well, absolutely. Challenges definitely remain. Raising awareness and changing deeply ingrained behaviors around hygiene and sanitation, that's still a work in progress in many places. Cultural practices can be hard to shift. Then there's infrastructure. While millions of toilets were built, ensuring they're all usable, maintained, and that waste is properly treated, especially in rural areas, that's an ongoing issue. Consistent funding is always a need, too, for maintenance, education, new initiatives. And finally, India is incredibly diverse, geographically and culturally. What works in one state might not work in another. So developing more tailored region-specific strategies is still needed.
It's really clear, though, that this mission isn't just about surface cleanliness, is it? It seems like a major effort towards societal transformation, boosting human capital, and even driving economic growth in India. Wow, what a journey we've been on today in this deep dive. We've covered so much ground from, legal symbols and deep economic theories to the mysteries of the Twilight Zone, world-changing industrial processes, and then massive nationwide social change. It's quite a mix.
It really is.
Yeah.
And understanding these diverse topics helps you build that well-informed perspective we talked about. You start seeing the connections, don't you? How justice reform might link to economic opportunity, how environmental science impacts global health, how engineering feeds into societal well-being. They're not separate boxes.
Exactly. So here's a final thought to leave you with. Reflecting on all this interconnectedness and complexity we've discussed, climate impacting oceans, innovation having double edges, social programs facing huge hurdles, what responsibility do we as individual learners have? What role can you play in pushing for sustainable, equitable solutions? Maybe even just starting in your own community. It's a big question, definitely something worth mulling over. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and definitely keep connecting the dots in the fascinating world around you.